guys, this is What If Superman and Superboy Were in Invincible Part 1, Season 2. Now, let's hit it. So, last time I left off, a little bit of a cap, because that last part to Season 1 was about a year ago. So, we're back with Season 2. And plus, I just saw the new trailer for the, part 2 of Season 2. That is finna hit hard. And I already see glimpses of the whole, Mark fighting that one Vulture that did a little bit of a, SA on him. That. But I don't even know how they're gonna really explain that in the TV show. They should not punch. They should not pull any punches on that part of the whole thing, because that's like a big part of like the entirety of the Invincible continuity in the timeline and how that affects Mark throughout the comics. But other than that, pretty good trailer. But honestly, last time I left off, getting back to the story, the plot of this fan fiction. Basically, last time I left off, Superman, Omni-Man had a fight. Omni-Man, the only reason he somewhat won, was because he had some boosters that boosted up his healing factor, or Vulture natural healing factor. And also, he had a lot of kryptonite on him by deck, because in this universe, Lex Luthor and multiple different Superman villains still do kind of exist in some way or version, because Lex Luthor in some way is a type of big, organization that's not as big as the mainstream Lex Corp, but still big enough so it can produce big technology to go against characters like Superman. Also, the other fact that other villains like, I can't remember his name completely, but other villains that are very much like everybody else in the DC universe that fight against Superman. And even characters like Deathstroke are still part of this world, because Deathstroke fights everybody, man. He's more ran through than any other DC villain, because he literally fought. At this point he's Nightwing's arch enemy, and he's basically everybody else's arch enemy, man. He fought Batman, the Teen Titans, Young Justice. Like, bro, he just fighting everybody. Like, bro, stick to one hero. Like, goddamn, bro, going everywhere. Stick to one hero. Be loyal, like Joker is. Well, the Injustice series does kind of change that up. He didn't really become loyal towards Batman, but he's still a Batman villain, But enough of that. So last time I left off, Omni-Man, Superman, they fought. Superman lost because of kryptonite and a bunch of other things. Omni-Man got, prepared for this fight, because he knew that Kryptonians were way stronger than Vulture, or not Kryptonians, because Kryptonians don't exist in this universe, because they got pushed out of their universe into the Invincible world. If you know the plot from the first series and how everybody's here in the Invincible universe and the DC universe, you know what I'm talking about. But enough of that. Let's dive right into what happened after the aftermath of the final finale series fight between Omni-Man and Superman. After that, Omni-Man would have left, and we could switch to Mark looking over the spot where he was brutally beaten down to death, as we get a little bit of a recap of what happened afterwards. As we see that Mark is flying around the city and basically just stopping crime and just trying to clear his mind about everything that's gone on in his life the last few months. As he's flying around the city, we eventually get switched to Superman, because in this continuity, in this series, we're going to focus more on Superman's role in this universe. In the first season, we focused more on Jonathan and Mark's relationship and how they really talked to each other, how they really acted with each other, the usual. But in this continuity, for a little bit of this, we're going to be focusing more on Superman and how he really changes this world on a bigger scale. Now we get switched to Superman, as he's stopping some crime on the east side of the city. As he looks over, and he's stopped by, Immortal. Immortal in this continuity has been brought back by Cecil's men. Immortal looks over at Clark, or Kal-El, or Superman, and tries to talk to him and convince him to join the Guardians of the Globe, the new team, and be a part of the group. As Mark sees this from afar as he's like, fighting the city. He's going around the city. He sees it from afar, and he's kind of just trying to listen what's going on. As Clark just walks away from him, saying that I don't want to be a part of your team. And he's stopped by, Immortal. As Immortal grabs his arm saying, I need your help. I need you. You're a amazing hero. You stopped Nolan. You are the strongest hero we have on our planet. You only lost because of complications unknown to us, or known to Cecil, but not to me. But you're the strongest being on this planet right now. We need your help in case anybody else like Nolan comes back. And for villains that are coming back and they're trying to fill up the power gap of Omni-Man destroying half of the city and putting everybody into homes and body bags and everywhere. I don't want your help. I don't want to help you. I'm a hero, yes, but after what happened, after Nolan, what he did, I haven't trusted him for a long time, but at the same time, he was my friend. I thought we were friends, at least. But Immortal, we've known each other for a long-ish time, and I love to help you humans. I love to help everybody. I'm Superman. I'm the man of still hope, freedom, justice, truth, and liberty. The American way. Back to what Nolan did. I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna do it on my own. I'm gonna try to rebuild what was lost. Because if you don't know, us jumping out of, Clark's, scenes, jumping out of Clark's lines, a little bit of a break in character. To be honest with you guys, in the original, what happened, not original, but the final season finale, their fight was way more destructive because it was Clark, Jonathan, and Mark, and Superman, and Nolan fighting. Dude, that amount of damage was 10 times worse. Different countries and cities were destroyed by this fight. Oceans were obliterated by this fight. Places were torn down by this fight. It's so much property damage that's way worse in this continuity. But it gets shown that Clark isn't really much sympathetic towards Immortal. He's sympathetic to the world, but he doesn't want to help the Guardians of the Globe. They're just trying to stop crime. But he's trying to save his family. He's trying to salvage his family. He's trying to look after his son. As he's talking about Jonathan, and he gets switched to Canada. As Jonathan is at a coffee shop, as Jonathan's been away home, as he's been going around the country and around the world trying to figure out who he is as a person. As Jonathan's been off the grid for a little while. You see Jonathan walking down the hallway of a nearby library as he grabs a book and he starts to read. He starts to read about histories, wars, and all sorts of things about the human world. Things he never even learned in school. Things he wants to learn. He wants to learn about the world. He wants to live as much as he can. Because after he fought with Nolan for that short second, his soul left his body because he wasn't strong enough. He almost let his dad die because he wasn't strong enough. Jonathan wanted to be strong enough to help. His Jonathan would be a lot older this time, but him still trying to figure out what he should truly do with his life. As you said, Jonathan gets up and starts to walk out the front door of the library as he gets stopped by a man in a black suit. This man in the black suit says, "Come with us," as he takes out a card and gives it to Jonathan. Jonathan is ushered into a limousine as he's drove into a nearby area to a airport. And then he gets put into the airport. He's on a first class flight. As we see that he is contemplating on just jumping out the plane because he doesn't really know what's going on. But he opens the envelope as is a well-written note from Cecil. Cecil asking him to be a part of this new double team, or I guess group he's trying to put together with the most qualified, educated, strong, and athletic students of the world. He's trying to put together a team, an ace team that can help the world. Something better than Guardians of the Globe. Something more Titan
Jonathan more. As Jonathan's kind of confused, but he goes along with it as he looks around the note and he says that he might meet his father soon. As Clark has given Jonathan his time, as Clark wants to talk to Jonathan, he wants to be there for him, and he's been there for him, giving him money when he needs it, and him talking to Jonathan when he wants to, or when Jonathan needs it. And Jonathan's going through a bad time, but Jonathan, these last few months, has been to himself. Now not even having slight contact with even Mark. As we see, we get switched to Mark. As Mark's story doesn't really change that much, but him still recovering from the last attack, because the whole fight between Superman and Nolan, he was way more beaten up. Everything that happened in the original, continuity with the fight was 10 times worse. So much more blood, broken bones, and just straight up everything. Mark still had cuts and bruises on his face that he needed even more time to heal from. You see that Mark is walking away as he stops and he looks over and says that, or he stops and he looks over and tries to tell himself that it's okay, that he's better than his dad. He tries to give himself affirmations that he's better than his dad. He won't become him. He won't make the world afraid of him. He won't be like Omni-Man. You see how he walks away. As we get switched to Clark. As Clark's flying down and he flies down to the house as he welcomes Lois. As Lois hugs him and says that I've got a call by Jonathan today saying that he's back in town. As Clark says he's back in town. As Clark tries to hear for him, tries to listen for him, but he can't find him. We get switched to Clark later that day, trying to figure out where Jonathan is, trying to call him, but getting no service. As Clark is kind of anxious what the hell's going on, but he hears a footstep at the front door. As Clark zooms to the front door, opening it, and it's Jonathan. As he embraces him with a big warm hug and cuddling him and caressing his back and basically just embracing him like a father should, since he hasn't seen his son in a few weeks, even a month by now, because he's been seeing him off and on throughout those months, but not really talking to him, not really staying longer than at least an hour with him in the same room. As we see that, they're talking, and we see that they start to bond a little bit more. As we get switched to later, a couple minutes later, as they're just taking some drinks, or just drinking some water, some juice. Lois drinking some wine, because she's, trying to take the edge off of the tenseness in the room. Because after what happened, Jonathan was scared. He didn't want to be a hero for a little while, because he almost died. He's almost died in the past, but it was different this time. His father was right next to him, and he couldn't help him. The man he thought was the strongest man in the world. The man he looked up to his whole life couldn't save him. It broke him inside to know that his father truly couldn't save him in that moment. As we see that Clark tries to talk to his son a little bit more about what's going on and why he's back in town, and has he found himself? It seems like he has. As Jonathan says, he's recovered a little bit, and I think, and he, in his words, Jonathan goes on, I think I'm ready, Dad. I think I'm ready to come back. I think I'm ready to truly grab the suit and put it back on. Jonathan is told by Clark that, if that's what you want, I've been talking to Art, and it seems like he wants to help you out. He's made a new suit for you. It's a little bit more of an upgraded version of mine, but it suits you and your personality and what you're going through right now. As he shows him a suit, and this is, Jonathan's new suit. Jonathan's new suit is decked out with the latest technology that will allow him to even push his Kryptonian genes to the next level. And even a backup generator to the back of the suit underneath the cape that is a last resort if he ever gets hit with kryptonite or any type of weakness to Kryptonians like magic. As it hits him with an insane amount of solar radiation that it would literally give anybody around him that was human cancer. He hits him with an insane amount of super scorching, it would supernova levels of solar radiation that slightly burns or hurts Jonathan, but pushes or burns any Kryptonian weaknesses or kryptonite or any type of kryptonite in his system out of his body, as it powers him up for a decent amount of days, as basically a last resort in case he's ever hit with kryptonite or any type of overpowered situation where he needs more power or more strength in his body and he can't muster up anymore. It's more of a last resort, like kind of like pulling the fire alarm. Not a last resort, but like pretty much a backup plan to if you can't like deal with it yourself, you know? Kind of like the last resort being like a gun or something. But with that suit, it only has that feature plus a couple others like padding around the body and suit that doesn't really work because he's Kryptonian. He's kind of invincible off bat, so the padding is kind of unnecessary, but it makes the suit look a lot more high tech than it actually is. So Clark says that he says that it has a lot of padding but it has a lot of padding and armor on it that isn't actually, does anything. A majority of this suit was actually worked on by Clark and Art, as Clark and Art became a lot closer throughout the months, and even him going as far as becoming best friends with Art. He was friends with Art before what happened with Nolan, but now he's best friends with him, and he's grown and healed with him over the loss of Nolan turning on them and becoming, well, a villain. Becoming a monster in the eyes of the world. As you see that he would have took him to the Fortress of Solitude as the next couple days or months throughout him having this idea for Jonathan if he ever wanted to come back to the hero gig. He made a suit out of Kryptonian technology plus a couple human technology. So majority of the suit is Kryptonian technology like comms, links, and also like a display system if he ever activates the collar of it, because it puts like a hologram, I guess, Ready Player One type of display over his face, so he can get like stretch calls or stuff like that. But majority of the time, it's just the comms in his ears, and it's also a life thing in the chest of the suit. Basically, pretty simple. The chest of the suit will monitor his vitals in case anybody loses him when he's in space or he goes into a black hole or anything like that. They can track his vitals and everything of the sort as long as he's in the same universe. If he goes into a different galaxy, not a different galaxy, but a different entire different universe, then you kind of lose him. But it is what it is. Jonathan puts on the suit and he feels the power and the tightness because it kind of folds to his body. Kryptonian technology. As Jonathan smiles, saying, "I like it a lot, Dad. Thanks, Art. Thanks, Dad." If you don't know who Art is, he's the Teller in the Invincible universe, and if that's not his name, it is now in my continuity. Deal with it. Enough of that. So after that, we would see that Mark would have been doing his own thing. So you get switched to Mark. Now, Mark would have been doing some training in some sort of areas around the world, as he would have tried to figure out what the hell's going on with him and how this all going down. He tried to figure out what's going on with him and how he can really deal with what's going on. But he eventually is told off by something else as he looks over his shoulder and he's shown something he needed to see. Now we get switched away from Mark's story because I'm not going to focus more on Mark. Mark's story has already been explained and you've seen the seasons or the final episodes. Mark's story hasn't really changed much because this is mainly focusing on how this has affected not affected Nolan, but affected Clark and Jonathan. How is this affecting them? And how is this affecting Debbie and Lois? As we get switched to Lois and Debbie a couple days later, not a couple days later, but a couple hours later, like a day later, as they would have been talking to each other. As we would have been shown that later that night, Alfred Jonathan would have came home, putting back on his suit and testing it out with his dad around the world on the other side of the planet. As we see that, not Nolan, but we would have seen that, Mark would have been told by his mom that he was going out that night. As Mark would have been kind of confused, saying, "So where are you going to?" As he says he's gonna meet up with Lois. As Mark says, "Jonathan's mom? Where's Jonathan?" As Lois says, "Well, he didn't tell you? He's back in town." As Mark is kind of excited and kind of happy as he flies off saying that I'm gonna try to find him. As he flies off over to Lois's house. Lois already left, and Clark and Jonathan already left as well. As Mark's kind of sad that Jonathan didn't tell him, as Mark sits on the house roof for a little while, thinking about what happened to Jonathan and how Jonathan's feeling right now, with him kind of looking up to Nolan and kind of becoming friends with him over and through Mark, and being almost killed by him. It must have broke him. It must have changed him, and it changed Mark too. As Mark would have flew up into the sky, as he would have gotten hit with a blast of energy, him getting shot down to the sky and into the ground. As you see that Mark would have gotten up, as he would have been, well, basically shown to some sort of figure in a black cloak, as he would have looked over to him saying, "So this is Mark Grayson, the son of Omni-Man, the son of Nolan Grayson." Pathetic. Pathetic how such a powerful hero can be the father of this pathetic yellow-suited freak. You're pathetic. As Mark would have gotten up, getting to fighting stance, saying, "Who are you?" As he says, "My name is unconsequential. My name is something that you don't really need to know because you won't be saying anything on your last breaths of air when I take it from your dead corpse." As Mark says, "Dead corpse? Hold up. How would you take gas of air out of a dead body? Then I would be dead before you get to the air." As Mark would just kind of, say a smirky comment saying that kind of makes no sense. As he says, "Shut up, it doesn't matter." As he would have shot another bolt of energy towards Mark. Mark dodging it narrowly as he would have flew up in the sky, flying back down, doing a slam move on this masked villain. As this villain would have dodged out the way, hitting him with a blast of energy, pushing him down to the ground. As Mark would have said, "That hurt like hell." As he would have put it together, saying that it's probably magic. As Mark would have been flying around trying to dodge these attacks back to back, as his man would have flew towards Mark, grabbing him by the throat and chucking him back down to the ground, trying to stop him from flying away. As his man would have grabbed Mark from the scalp of his head. I mean, the scalp, like getting right up in there with a light speed, just up in there, just getting right up in that crevices. You know what I'm saying? And basically straight up punishing this dude. Pause. Putting him back in the ground, back to back to back to back to back to back to back. Getting the slam on Mark. Eventually, Mark would have been kind of pissed off and would have thrown a huge punch, being blinded by a little bit of rage, as he would have almost punched the man's jaw clean off. As the man said, You're lucky I'm not human. You would have killed me." As Mark would have said, "I know you're not human if you throw me around like this." As Mark would have got to fighting stance again, but him being stopped by Clark. As Clark would have shot a laser blast, knocking this masked villain off his balance. As the masked villain would have looked up, seeing Jonathan and Clark, as it would have said time to go. As he would have teleported out of there. As Clark would have tried to fly over there before he teleported away, but him being a little bit too slow, as the villain had a little bit of a head start on teleportation than the speed of Clark flying. As Clark would have got down there and would have helped up Mark, as Mark would have said, "Hey, it's been a long time." As Clark would have said, "Not a long time. I heard you earlier listening on my conversation with the Immortal." As well, Mark would have said, "Oh yeah, super hearing. Forgot about that one." As Clark would have kind of, giggled a little bit. Not giggled, but would have smirked a little bit. As he would have looked over to Jonathan, gesturing Jonathan to talk to his friend. As Jonathan would have looked over to Mark, as Mark would have looked over to Jonathan, as they would have had a talk. Or not a talk, but a stare. Understanding and stare about what happened, about how they felt, about how it changed them, how it made something worse or for the better. It was something that they could both bond over, but it was something that broke his trust in Mark. Because how did Mark grow up with this man and not even know he was such a monster? As we would see that Mark would have seen the disappointment in Jonathan's eyes, but Jonathan walking over to Mark and hugging him, saying that you're not your dad, and I thought of that of you for so long, but now I realize that that's not how the Clarks think. That's not how a Superman would be. as he would have hugged Mark, saying that you're not in fault, but I guess to say it, I forgive you, Mark, for not knowing that he was him. As Mark would have said that it's okay, I get, thanks for forgiving me. As he would have chuckled a little bit, they would have both laughed it off. As Clark would have gotten kind of happy by seeing his, two boys, as he literally somewhat grew up or raised Mark in some sort of way. He was there for Mark when he was younger, and he was there to help him up when he was down, even when no one wasn't. As we guys seen that Jonathan would have flew off with Mark, as Mark and Jonathan would have been talking about what's going on and what they've done the last few months. Mark would have said he's trying to get back into business and have Cecil hook him up with a mission or two. As Jonathan says, me too, I'm trying to be on part of a mission. But the thing is, I am already, and he wants me to recruit you, Cecil. Cecil says, you're not really ready, but I'm saying he wants me to recruit you because I want to recruit you. He's making a team. Somebody or some team. It's called something like the Teen Titans. So I'm going to leave it off here, guys. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.